You've lived in the same house for 20 years. Same front door. Same creak on the third stair. Same view from the kitchen window you've looked through 10,000 mornings without actually seeing it once. Most people think a house is just a container. Somewhere you keep your life while the real changes happen elsewhere, at work, in relationships, inside your own head. That's not what actually happens. 20 years in the same walls doesn't just store your life. It shapes it. Quietly. Without asking permission. By the time you notice what it's done to you, it's already done. I've thought about this longer than most people ever will. Not as a theory. As something I've watched happen to myself, to people close to me, one unnoticed year at a time. Here's what actually happens to a person who stays in one place for 2 decades, walk through in the order it actually unfolds, starting with the part you'd expect, and ending with the part almost nobody sees coming until it's staring back at them. Leave a like. Subscribe, and let's get into it. The human brain is built to stop noticing anything that stops changing. It's called habituation, and it's not a personality flaw, it's a survival mechanism. Attention is expensive. The brain conserves it by filtering out anything that's already been classified as safe, known, unchanging. Your house qualifies almost immediately. Within the first year, the paint color stops registering as a color and starts registering as background. The crack in the hallway ceiling, the water stain shaped vaguely like a country you can't quite name, you notice these things intensely in month 2. By year 5, your eyes pass over them the same way they pass over air. Visitors see your house. You don't. A friend walks in for the first time and comments on the light in the living room, the way the hallway smells faintly of cedar, the specific creak of the floor near the stairs. You have no idea what they're talking about. Not because you're unobservant, because your brain filed all of it away as irrelevant data years ago, freeing up processing power for things that still change. There's a specific test that proves this, one that plays out in almost every long-term household without anyone designing it on purpose. Repaint one wall a single new color, and for exactly 1 week, everyone in the house comments on it. By week 2, the comments stop. By week 3, a guest asks when that wall was painted, and someone who's looked at it 50 times since the change genuinely can't remember, with total confidence, whether it was recent or whether it's always been that way. The same thing happens with smell, and it happens faster than almost anything else. A house has a specific scent signature, the particular blend of the wood, the fabric on the furniture, whatever cleaning products get used. Someone who's lived there for 2 decades cannot smell their own house at all. Walk back in after a 2-week vacation, though, and for about 90 seconds, the scent hits with startling clarity before the nervous system recalibrates and erases it from awareness again. What fails, assuming this means you don't care about the house anymore? You do. You've just stopped perceiving it as something worth actively looking at, which is a very different thing, and a much stranger one. You live inside a space you can no longer actually see. Walk into your kitchen at 3 a.m. with the lights off. You don't hesitate. Your hand finds the light switch without searching. Your feet know exactly where the hallway narrows, exactly how many steps to the bathroom door, exactly which floorboard to avoid so it doesn't creak and wake the house. This isn't memory in the way you normally think about memory, recalling a fact, picturing an event. This is procedural memory, the same system that lets you type without looking at the keyboard or ride a bike after years away from one. Repeated 4 times a day for 20 years, the layout of your house stops being something you know. It becomes something you are. The specific evidence shows up when you travel. You wake up in a hotel room and, for one disoriented half-second, your body starts to execute the exact motor sequence it uses at home, reaching for a switch that isn't there, expecting a door that doesn't exist in that position. There's a specific, almost eerie version of this that shows up during emergencies, the exact scenario where motor memory matters most. Ask anyone who's lived through a power outage in their own home of 20 years, and they'll describe navigating the entire house in complete darkness with a strange, unbothered confidence, stepping around furniture they can't see, finding candles and matches in a drawer without hesitation. Ask that same person to do the same thing in a house they've lived in for 6 months, and the confidence disappears entirely. The difference isn't intelligence or resourcefulness. It's raw repetition, tens of thousands of repeated trips through the same rooms, encoded so deeply into procedural memory that the body performs the task without consulting conscious thought at all. Nobody warns you that comfort has a neurological cost. 20 years of ease in one place is 20 years of skill you never had to build anywhere else. A pencil line on a doorframe, and the year written next to it. A crayon streak behind the bookshelf nobody's moved since a child who's now an adult drew it. A dent in the drywall from a piece of furniture that left the house a decade ago, the furniture gone, the dent still there, still telling the story of a day nobody else remembers. A house lived in for 20 years doesn't just contain your memories. It becomes a physical, load-bearing archive of them, one you didn't curate on purpose, one that accumulates by accident, layer over layer, the way sediment builds a canyon wall. This produces something specific and mostly invisible. You can walk through your own home and, without meaning to, walk through a timeline of every version of yourself that's ever lived there. The 25-year-old who painted that room a color you'd never choose now. The version of you mid-crisis who left a hole in a wall you eventually patched but never quite matched the texture of. The version of you who was, for one specific summer, unreasonably happy, for reasons the house remembers even though you've half forgotten them. Most people who move every few years never build this. Their walls stay blank, rented, temporary, careful. 20 years in one place means the walls themselves develop a memory you can't edit or delete, only walk past, mostly without noticing, until one ordinary afternoon you actually look, and the entire timeline hits you at once. Neighbors move in. Neighbors move out. The family next door with the toddler you remember as a toddler now has a teenager who drives. The corner store becomes a different corner store, then a different one again. The street itself gets repaved, the trees you watched planted as saplings now cast full shade over a sidewalk that's been replaced twice. None of this happens to you. All of it happens around you, while your address stays exactly the same. This creates a specific, disorienting role reversal that nobody warns you about. You become the reference point. New neighbors introduce themselves by asking how long you've been here, and when you answer, you watch something shift in their face, a recalibration of what established means on this street, with you suddenly cast as the fixture, the permanent feature, the person who was already here before they existed in this place. There's a specific moment that captures this shift perfectly, and almost everyone who's stayed long enough eventually lives through some version of it. A new family moves in a few doors down, and within the first month, someone from that family approaches you, not out of particular curiosity about you specifically, but because you're the person who can answer questions the neighborhood itself can no longer answer for itself. Which day is trash collected? Whether the water pressure issue is a house problem or a street problem. What that empty lot on the corner used to be before it was empty. You answer easily, almost without thinking, and only afterward does it land. You are now, functionally, a piece of neighborhood infrastructure. Not a person people are getting to know. A fixture people are consulting. The paradox is that you don't feel like a fixture. You feel like the same uncertain, still figuring it out person you've always been. But from the outside, 20 years of a single address reads as something else entirely: stability, permanence, roots, whether or not that's what it actually feels like on the inside. 20 years is enough time for a house to stop being neutral square footage and start being a filing system for everything that's happened to you. The kitchen table is where a specific argument happened, the one that changed how two people spoke to each other for a year afterward. The back step is where a phone call came in that split your life into before and after. The guest room is where a parent stayed during the worst month of an illness, and you still hesitate, faintly, walking past that door. This isn't sentimentality. It's how memory actually encodes. Context-dependent recall means specific locations become wired to specific emotional states, the same way a smell can instantly return you to a moment you hadn't thought about in years. 20 years in one house means every room has, whether you intended it or not, become tagged with an emotional signature that gets quietly reactivated every time you walk through it. Over 20 years, this filing system doesn't stay simple. Rooms accumulate layered, sometimes contradictory associations. The same kitchen table that holds the memory of one argument also holds a decade of ordinary breakfasts, homework help, quiet mornings with coffee before anyone else woke up. The emotional tag attached to a room isn't a single note. It's a chord, built from every significant moment that ever happened inside those four walls, and the specific mixture is different for every person who's lived there long enough to build one. Two people who've shared the same house for the same 20 years often carry entirely different emotional maps of it. The same doorway that holds quiet comfort for one person holds a memory the other has never fully mentioned out loud. Most people never notice this consciously. They just feel, without knowing why, a specific heaviness walking past one door, a specific ease sitting in one particular chair. The house has organized your emotional history into rooms, and you've been living inside that filing system for 2 decades without ever opening the drawer to look at what's actually in it. In year 1, staying in the house is a choice. By year 20, staying has become the default, and the alternative, moving, starting over somewhere new, has quietly accumulated so much perceived cost that it stops being seriously considered at all. This is loss aversion operating at the scale of an entire life. The known discomforts of the current house, the loud pipes, the small closet, the neighbor who mows his lawn too early, feel smaller than the unknown discomforts of somewhere new, even when the unknown option is, by almost any objective measure, better. The specific danger is that this preference for the familiar starts to generalize. People who've stayed in one house for 20 years often report staying in the same job longer than they wanted to, the same routines, the same social circle, long after those things stop serving them, because the same psychological machinery that makes the house feel safer than it objectively is starts applying itself to everything else in life too. The specific trap compounds over time in a way that's easy to miss year by year but obvious looking back over 2 decades at once. Each individual year, staying feels like the reasonable choice. The move would be disruptive right now, the timing isn't ideal, next year makes more sense. None of those individual decisions feels wrong in the moment. But stack 20 of them consecutively, and the pattern reveals itself, an entire adult life spent choosing the familiar discomfort over the unfamiliar possibility, one small, defensible decision at a time, until the sum of those decisions has quietly become the whole shape of a life nobody consciously designed. Comfort isn't the opposite of growth. It's something quieter and more dangerous, a state that feels identical to contentment from the inside, whether or not it actually is contentment, and that almost nobody questions until something forces the question: a job loss, a health scare, a person who leaves, and suddenly you're asking whether you stayed because you wanted to, or because leaving simply stopped feeling like an option. Memory doesn't measure time the way a calendar does. It measures time by the density of new, distinct experiences packed into it. This is why a 2-week trip to somewhere unfamiliar can feel longer, in retrospect, than an entire year of routine at home. The brain lays down far more memory markers during novelty, and fewer during repetition. 20 years in the same house, walking the same rooms, taking the same route to the same job, produces exactly the conditions for this compression to happen at scale. Years start to blur into each other, not because nothing happened, but because so much of what happened was structurally identical to what happened the year before, and the year before that. People who move frequently, new cities, new apartments, new neighborhoods every few years, report the opposite distortion. Time feels like it moves slower, because every relocation forced a burst of new memory encoding, new mental maps, new routines that had to be learned from scratch. The quiet cost of 20 years in one house is this specific kind of temporal theft. Not that the time wasn't lived, it was. But that so much of it compressed into a blur that, looking back, 2 decades can genuinely feel shorter in memory than a single eventful year somewhere else did. A parent who used to call from a specific chair in a specific room. A pet whose water bowl sat in the same kitchen corner for 12 years, now empty, the faint outline still visible in the tile's discoloration. A relationship that ended, its former half of the closet now holding your own overflow, the empty hangers rearranged so many times you've stopped counting. 20 years is long enough for a house to absorb multiple significant losses, and here's the specific mechanism that makes this different from grief experienced anywhere else: you don't get to leave the site of the loss. Every single day, your body walks past the exact physical coordinates where something ended, whether you're consciously thinking about it or not. This produces a strange, low-grade emotional weight that accumulates without ever fully resolving, not depression, not active grief, but a kind of ambient sadness embedded in specific square footage, one that visitors never feel and you've mostly stopped registering consciously, the same way you stopped seeing the crack in the ceiling. What fails? Assuming time automatically processes this. Grief tied to a location you never leave doesn't fade the way grief tied to a location you eventually move away from does. It settles instead, quietly, into the walls, becoming part of the house's permanent emotional temperature. 20 years in one house doesn't just shape your habits and your memories. It quietly becomes part of your identity, and the house leaving your life would feel less like a change of address and more like losing a piece of yourself you can't name or replace. Ask someone who's lived in the same home for 2 decades to imagine selling it, and watch what actually happens. It's rarely just logistical hesitation about boxes and moving trucks. It's something closer to an identity threat, a flicker of the same anxiety people feel imagining the loss of a relationship, a career, a name they've been called their whole life. The house has quietly become load-bearing for their sense of self, the same way it became load-bearing for their motor memory, their emotional filing system, their sense of time. This is why people delay moves they know, rationally, they should make. Why downsizing after children leave gets postponed for years past the point it stopped making practical sense. Why some people, faced with a home that's become genuinely difficult to maintain, choose the difficulty over the unknown identity that exists on the other side of leaving. There's a specific, quiet test that reveals just how deep this runs. Ask someone who's lived in the same house for 2 decades to describe, in detail, the exact moment they'd know it was truly time to leave, not a hypothetical financial trigger, not a job relocation, but the internal signal, the feeling that would finally outweigh everything the house has become. Most people can't answer immediately. They pause. Because the question isn't really about square footage or property value. It's about whether they can imagine being a coherent version of themselves somewhere that doesn't already contain 20 years of evidence that they were. The house was never just shelter. 20 years turned it into evidence that you existed, continuously, as a specific person, in a specific place, through every version of yourself that lived there. That's not a flaw. It's not something to fix. It's simply the quiet, mostly invisible price of 20 years of staying, and almost nobody sees the full bill until the day they seriously imagine leaving it behind. The house didn't just witness your life. By the 20th year, it had quietly become part of the architecture of who you are. None of this happened because anything went wrong. It happens simply because time, repetition, and familiarity work on the human mind whether you're paying attention or not. The house you stopped seeing shaped you more than almost anything you actively noticed happening in the same 20 years. You don't have to have lived somewhere for 2 decades for this to apply to you. The mechanism is the same wherever repetition and time accumulate: a job, a relationship, a routine, a version of yourself you settled into without ever formally deciding to. The house is just the clearest, most physical example of something quieter that's happening everywhere in your life right now. Notice the walls you've stopped seeing. Notice the rooms that carry a weight you never named. Notice the parts of your identity that are quietly resting on something external: a place, a habit, a life you built by staying, one unremarkable day at a time. Leave a like if this made you look at your own front door differently. Subscribe, there's more coming that most channels never think to ask. Notice the house before it quietly becomes the only version of you left. See you in the next one.